Welcome to StartupJab.
Okay, I don't know if that came through as clearly as it did for me, but God, I love that music. Hi, everybody. Welcome to StartupJab, episode 18, where we're going to talk about the wonderful business that is Heartfully. I am Jason Ellis, and with me, as always, the chocolate to my peanut butter. I think I've used that one before already. I don't know, but the chocolate to my peanut butter.
You got to try.
You know what? The Elmo to my Big Bird. Yeah, that works. Teague Hopkins. Teague, how are you doing today?
Totally. I'm doing great.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear.
It is not nearly as cold as it has been, so happy for
Excellent.
that.
Love that. Today, we are very fortunate and very lucky to have with us somebody who is truly in the midst of building something really awesome and impressive. Please join me in welcoming Kate Glantz, who is the founder and owner of Heartfully. Kate, thanks for coming by.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I imagine that you are in the midst of a lot of really cool stuff that we'll get to in a minute. But first, for those of our audience who haven't had a chance to check it out yet, can you talk a little bit about Heartfully and what you're proud of most about it?
Sure. So Heartfully is a wedding registry for charitable giving. And the way that we work is we partner with really cool nonprofits all over the world and in the United States. And we essentially feature the work that they're doing on like a project specific basis for couples to select as their wedding registry. And so, for instance, if you really care about education in Africa, you can build a classroom, and then the gifts that your guests buy you are the items in that budget. So one guest might buy you a pallet of bricks, another might buy you a door. And these are actually, they're donations, but we've kind of quantified it in this tangible way because, well, it feels good to be able to kind of see the impact that you're making in something. And it's just reflective of a traditional wedding registry.
So are the donations are actually it's an unrestricted donation to the nonprofit?
Restricted slightly.
But
so it's definitely not like one for one because at scale there's just never any way to be able to do that or monitor that. And so what we have an agreement with every nonprofit that says no money can be used for operational overhead, but they can use it however they see best fit for programs and services that affect the work that they're doing for that project. We just launched yesterday. We had a 6-month beta that was awesome, but very bare bones. I was sort of like cringing the whole time because it was just like not pretty, and it's a wedding company, so it has to be pretty. Yesterday was the big day. So it was quite a day. Thank you.
Congratulations. That's exciting.
High.
So I've had the pleasure of knowing you for over a year now. I'd love for you to share a little bit about not only how the idea came to you, but really how you took it from idea and started to build on that and make it something more substantive, to make it to where, to get it to where it is today.
Mm-hmm. So just, I would say just like a lot of grit because the idea sort of came to me when I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Tanzania a long time ago. And there's sort of two pieces to it. Like one, I was fundraising to build these toilets in my village, which is not a sexy thing. It's not like, it's just not something that you would probably elect to give money to. And so I really had to, figure out how to compel people to help me build toilets in my village. And so what I did was break it down into these items and said, hey, like you're just out of college, you have $10. Okay, that's, a bag of nails. And here are the kids that need these toilets. And just made it this really personable kind of human to human thing. And so that always stuck with me as a powerful way to compel people. And the other part was, I was in this village. We were 12 hours from the capital, totally off the power grid, no access to running water. We were just straight poor. But the degree to which my community knew how to throw down and celebrate was like pretty damn amazing. At every celebration, and a lot of these were weddings, like if you were anywhere in the neighborhood, you would go and you would get your Coca-Cola and your plate of rice and you were included. And it was just this really like sincere, inclusive communal celebration. And I think we we don't always do that in the United States. We get bogged down in logistics and, did they invite me to something? And we sort of have lost touch in some ways with like the most basic elements of what a celebration should be. And so as I came back to the United States and started going to all of these weddings, I was like, hey, I really see an opportunity here to bridge that gap. So that was sort of the impetus for it. How have I done it? I have no effing idea because
that's not helpful. But I feel like that's also not true.
So I'm stubborn, and when I say I'm going to do something, and when I want to do something, I'm going to do it. And so I had absolutely no technical background, no business background, but I had this vision that was so clear, and it was just like, all right, I got to start laying the foundation brick by brick, and how the hell do I do that? And so my very first foray into tech world was Startup Weekend, October 2014. I asked a friend in tech, like, what do I do? Like, I have this idea, like, what next? And he's like, Google every like pitch competition you can find. And so that was the first one I entered. And I think Jason was actually a mentor at it. Did we lose him? Oh, he's going to miss me saying nice things about him. He'll be so disappointed. But yeah, so I went, I swear to you, I didn't even know what MVP stood for when I entered that competition. I knew nothing, and just built this really cool team of people who were almost as excited as I was, and ended up winning. And sort of the rest is history. Like, I have in no way done this on my own. I mean, I would say maybe to my detriment, I'm really good at convincing people to help out. And it's been just this like total, it takes a village mentality to get where I am today. But I really think we're picking up momentum now, and I'm really excited.
So how has the business evolved from what you originally came into Startup Weekend with?
It hasn't evolved at all. I mean, it's evolved in the operational ways. It's gotten smarter, more efficient, more scalable. But in terms of the vision of creating a wedding registry or a gift registry that supports projects, it's broken down by gifts, that tells a beautiful story, that connects communities, it's all the same. And I think that, we played around with, like I said, like maybe some of the revenue model and things like that. But in terms of the vision, it's pretty much stayed constant. And hopefully that's a good thing. But we'll see. Jason, I was complimenting you. Well, I didn't really compliment you. I stopped because you weren't there. But you were a mentor at
I dropped out, and I appreciate that. That's very generous of you.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'd say on a total aside, I hope I'm not doubling up on something you said earlier, but the opportunities to try new things out at Startup Weekend are hugely awesome. I've been coaching there, on and off for the last couple of years, and I've done a few myself. I mean, they provide such a cool opportunity to test drive something, even if it's just for a really intense weekend, and just work out some of the kinks in the thinking, let alone, the process of building, the gathering of resources, the thinking through the business strategy, all of that. How much of that carried after? I mean, talk about sort of from there, getting to the next couple of phases.
Yeah. So what we accomplished in Startup, first of all, I went to Startup Weekend with my 60-second pitch and was like, well, nobody here has to be nice to me. No one has to tell me this is a good idea. And so it was really the litmus test to be like, I'm probably going to do this anyway, but let's see what strangers think. And so it was really awesome that people got so involved. But yeah, for the probably 3 months after Startup, maybe 6 months after Startup Weekend, all of the data we collected, I was like very confidently telling people that this was like our market research. And so, which is like ridiculous. We did a survey of maybe 250 people, and I was like standing in front of whoever being like, yes, like definitively this is our market. And so I don't think I would have had that information or access to that information as quickly. As if, I had this team of like MBAs, designers, developers all around me for these like 50 really concentrated, intense hours. And we got so much done. And it was a really solid foundation. And so, I mean, it was, and then just the people, that was sort of my cachet for like a month or two. I'd be like, you have to say hi to me now. I won Startup Weekend. And like, I had to like prove my value after that, but it did open a lot of doors. And I got to sit down with you guys at Overachiever Media. I got to sit down with iStrategy Labs. And a lot of those relationships have carried on to today as sort of in like an advisory or run things by you kind of way. And it's been awesome.
Well, I mean, it's been pretty cool it's been pretty cool to watch it grow from an idea to how it got there. T, what was your question? I'm sorry.
So I gathered that you showed up at Startup Weekend with sort of a pitch and a dream and not a team or anything.
Nothing. No.
Then you worked with folks through that weekend. Did any of those people continue on to help you after the weekend?
One or
the folks that
two.
you worked with on the team, not the advisors. We know Jason.
Right. Yeah, Jason's still around. So it was really interesting. Half the team were just sort of in it for the weekend. Like they wanted a fun kind of whatever weekend event. And so they stayed supportive, but not super connected. And one or two really helped me get our first website off the ground. It was a Squarespace. It's very basic, but nice. And they kind of actually one really stuck through for about 2 months. And she was like, listen, like, this is great, but I definitely am not as invested as you are. And I don't want to let you down the road. So I'm going to part ways. And we still talk and email. And from there, I sort of brought on people from GA, actually, students, teachers, and they have been like such a resource to me. General Assembly.
Yeah. So, and the team now is you plus...
I'm the only full-time because I'm poor. But like seriously poor. But I do have a developer who's about half-time or so. He works full-time. He has a great job. And his name's Corey Spiesman. He's awesome. I think he's at Deloitte now. And he is just freaking genius. He's so good. And he's built this entire platform out of the goodness of his heart mostly, which is kind of nuts. But I'm not going to ask questions.
Well, that's really cool. I mean, I think one of the things that is always fun about starting something is when you find people not only with common vision, but an understanding of you are trying to build something with a greater good aspect to it, right? Not just the greater good that you're working towards in terms of supporting, communities in need. But the fact of the matter is you're trying to build something that's longer term, and that is a greater good in and of itself too. Have you had challenges with people who didn't match that vision? I mean, people who, sort of may have made you stumble on the way?
Not many, actually. I mean, people, so there have been dozens of people who have been supporting me along the way. And it's really interesting because I don't have money, people know. And so, I'll pay people for the really technical things, the UX design, whatever. But for kind of features or support or strategy, people almost view this, I think, as like doing volunteer work. And so there's not really anything contractual or longstanding. It's sort of these relationships ebb and flow and people plug in where they can. There was sometimes you have to, what I'm learning now is that culture is everything. And, I've worked in government for 7 years and you don't get to decide culture. You just show up and be a nice little cog and you push your papers. And so defining culture early on didn't even cross my mind until I came up, until I started working with someone who I thought was amazing. But we didn't have the same probably long-term view. And I had to part ways. And so that's a good lesson now to really go into these potentially longer-term relationships. And when I hire people, to really make sure we've got the same vibe.
Yeah. Especially when it's such a small team, you need to make sure that those people are holding the same vision you are.
Absolutely. So where have you found the most value in terms of looking for assistance or resources? Do you find that, it's easy to go and search for this kind of stuff online? Do you need to network with people? Like, what's your method for solving a problem and resource gathering?
So it sounds kind of nuts, but honestly, I post everything on my own Facebook page. I say, hey, who knows this? Or I have $50 to spend on this. And if it's not a direct friend, then people will tag people. And I honestly have outsourced and crowdsourced 90% of everything I've needed through just asking questions on Facebook. And I'm lucky to have a pretty diverse network. I've lived in a lot of places and had sort of a lot of different life chapters. And so people, people have been so generous. So but networking to an extent, I've gotten a lot better at figuring out what to spend time going to and what I can skip. Because at the beginning, you're just like, I have to be everywhere. And you walk out of something and you wasted 2 hours that you could have been working, and it just kills you.
Every time I talk to T, it's just 2 hours of, no, that's great, buddy.
2 hours of your life you're never going to get back.
No.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's cool. I mean, do you feel the most precious resource then is time, even as things continue to grow? I mean, obviously you need to make money, but is it still a challenge even now?
Like having enough time?
Having enough time, yeah. I mean, just being able to divide your time up in the ways that make it most effective.
Yeah.
I know money's a challenge. Money's always a challenge.
Yeah, money is always a challenge. But no, time, that would be exactly it. I mean, right now my life is heartfully. I see my friends occasionally. I will like extracurricularly go on dates just to like whatever, break up the monotony, not the monotony, but just like get out. And I mean, I'm pretty much like 8:30 till I pass out every day. But that's okay because I'm building something that I love. And this is like a really gross analogy, but you'll probably like it. So I feel like I had this like 12-month child inside of me, and I'm just like, oh, like I know it's amazing and special and smart, and it's gonna be the best child ever, but like get it the fuck out of me. And so launching yesterday.
That's awesome. That's the first time a guest has cursed before I have on a recording. That's spectacular.
So my birthday yesterday.
Yeah.
Isn't that morbid and gross?
No, it's great.
And now
Seems
my
like,
child is, it's like my child, my boyfriend, my puppy, it's like everything. And it keeps me up at night. It annoys the shit out of me, but I love it so much. And so that is Heartfully. Heartfully is now born and alive and beautiful.
That is a fantastic analogy, and I love it. I think that perfectly describes the process of starting a business. That like it is all of those things all at once, and it's like it's overwhelming sometimes, but you wouldn't trade it.
No, I mean, it's like honestly, it's the hardest, most challenging thing I've ever done, but like my life has been absolutely illuminated. I was always I was moving to Africa every 2 years, like searching for like a new job or something to inspire me. And finally I just like found that this was it. And it was right here and it was inside of me, which is super cheesy to say, but it's true.
But sometimes the cheesy stuff is important to remind us that
it is. And I have a wedding company, so I gotta like turn on the cheese a little bit, but not too much. Someone asked if I did an Indiegogo or something. Am I allowed to address questions? Or is that okay?
Yeah.
Yes, please do.
So I'm actually pretty adamant about not doing any crowdfunding because what I've built is essentially a crowdfunding platform. And and that, so that's one element. It kind of confuses the brand, I think. But the other is that my social network is so phenomenal and so invested in what I'm doing that I want their voice. I don't want people to give me $20 or $50. I want them to just be evangelists for the brand. And I think that when you ask for money, people will probably gladly do it, but I want them to feel like this is like theirs too. I don't know. Maybe it's backward view, but I would rather seek angel funding and kind of get the funding in that way than put anything on my.
Oh no. Oh, we lost her. All right. Well, we'll bring her back in a second as soon as she loads back in. I can speak to that is the worst timing we've had that happen yet. While we're waiting for Katie, Kate, excuse me. I will say this. I mean, Teague, I don't know if you, and we've got her back. And here I was going to vamp. That was crazy.
My everything just shut down. It was like, it's like hot. I don't know. Maybe.
Okay. I'm sorry. Okay. Teague has that effect on a lot of people.
Yeah.
So.
You guys, you're burning up my screen.
Yeah. He's super pretty. So I wanted to ask if you, so you didn't do Indiegogo, you got started. Did you seek any sort of support? I mean, what kind of, once Startup Weekend was done, you had a concept, you'd gotten some research, you talked to folks like me and other people who advise you. And frankly, I probably gave you the worst advice, but that's okay. What happened after that? So talk about what happened between the afterglow of that to now in terms of, programs you were part of or resources that you found and give our listeners a really clear sense of the actual steps you took.
Yeah. So in the early days after Startup Weekend, there was no other resource beyond just sort of the kindness of strangers like you. Well, yes.
Oh, twice. No. I think we may be overloading her system.
Possibly.
Oh no. Yeah.
Here's an idea. We're going to pause while we solve this. We'll be right back. And we're back after a possibly not the best time for a software update. I don't know what OS you're using, but we're going to blame them.
It had to be done.
Damn you, Apple.
Yes, indeed. And we have a new guest with us now, who is not a guest for long. Katie, say hi.
Hey, everybody.
Yeah. So everybody who is joining us, thank you. This is Katie Stanton. Katie is our newly minted, fresh from the real world into the virtual world producer. She's going to be helping us manage StartupJab and turn it into, really, I think, a worldwide force. I think that really it's going to be your responsibility to make us super popular with everybody.
You're welcome in advance.
So for those of you just joining us, and to remind everybody who may have caught us midstream, we're talking to Kate, who is founder of Heartfully. Kate, you were just starting to tell us about some of what happened after you finished you
Right.
won Startup Weekend, and we're really starting to build momentum around Heartfully. So if you can, jump back into that.
And like, seriously, I'm so sorry. I clearly am not the technical person on the team.
It's all good.
But yeah, so after Startup Weekend, there were, a few really great meetings with you and others. And then it was sort of like, all right, well, I better start Googling some stuff because I have no idea what to do. And so that's what I did. I read everything, like I read every TechCrunch, like Quora, like all of that, and just sort of immersed myself in this new world and learned the lingo. Kind of. And
learn all the things.
Yeah, all the things. And as I would, go to different meetups and stuff, I would always meet one or two people that were really cool and that I would follow up with, and we would grab coffee, and that would either lead to some type of collaboration, or they definitely knew someone I should talk to. And it was sort of just this, on the tech and business side, it sort of grew like that. And in terms of bringing nonprofits on and sort of mobilizing my own people, I was able to go full steam ahead at that. So even I think what's kept me sort of sane is that is one thing that I do know how to do well is all the nonprofit-y stuff. So it felt like even if I was totally drowning in this other world, I at least could find my source of control and I don't know, in that way. And it actually is kind of holding me back in some ways now, because when I wake up to a gazillion emails, the things that I'm naturally inclined to take care of are probably that I know how to do are probably not the highest priority. So that's sort of a new thing that I'm learning to do is really be hyper focused, which I'm not at all.
Well, that's okay. I think some of us do best when we're all a little ADD.
Yeah. Frazzled, I like to say.
Frazzled. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to something you mentioned before our break. You said you mentioned very briefly the idea of raising angel investment, and that made me think of a couple things. So one, are you structured as a for-profit entity, or are you a nonprofit, or some hybrid in between?
I'm a Delaware C Corp. I'm a for-profit.
Okay, cool. And then two, what is your business model? So where does the money come from, or where will it eventually come from?
Really simple. We take a 9% service fee, and that's it.
Okay.
And that is really competitive with some of the bigger fundraising platforms that take upwards of 15 to 18. It's a number we tested. And it also had to be competitive with wedding registries in general. And so, usually there's no fee because you're buying tangible gifts. So that's how the company is making money. But we looked at Honey Fund and the honeymoon sort of destination ones, and they're lower than us. But what we're providing is such a high touch value. So that was the number that we settled on. Depending on the value we do provide, I'm looking at a subscription model for nonprofits, but that wouldn't happen until next year.
Gotcha. Did you, I'm sorry, T, you had a question.
I was just going to ask, so then I guess it's the model right now is that the 9% is coming off of what people are giving, and your idea of offering it as a subscription to nonprofits would then be, as a flat fee instead of a percentage of the amount of money given.
It would probably be
or some combination.
combination.
So it's a little bit like how PayPal does different tiers for different sizes.
And I think I'm not trying to get rich on making money on raising money for nonprofits. That's like the dream would be to eventually get this number down to just enough to sustain operations and expand into other revenue streams. And so that's all stuff that I'm looking at once we've sort of really nailed what we're doing with this and proven our value.
Speaking of revenue streams, we have a question in the chat from Micken who wants to know if you have any other event platforms in the plan, or events in the platform planning process outside of weddings. For sure. So by the end of 2016, I want to be in everything: birthdays, anniversaries, bar and bat mitzvahs. I think funerals are actually a big opportunity. And we're actually thinking about doing a beta for birthdays early next year. Because by the way, the plural of bar and bat mitzvahs is b'nai mitzvot.
I know.
Well, excuse me, you should know better, MOT. That would be member of the tribe. That is not intended to be insulting. Disclaimer, we're part of it. Never mind. Moving on. Oh, God, backtrack. You were saying.
What was I saying, Jason? I don't actually remember.
I don't know. Well, let me ask this. So I remember that one of the conversations that we had early on was this concern about how to generate revenue for the business. Do you feel that you talked about 9% surcharge on the whole thing, comparable against other platforms? Do you still get pushback on that? I mean, do people think that you should be doing this for free?
No. So we've had 5 weddings in our beta. We're doing about $1,600 per registry, and we've had about 100 people buy gifts or so. Not one comment on the 9%. The only place I get it is when I'm pitching. Investors are curious about how we got to that number. But the reality is our nonprofits, we tested the number with them too. And they're like, hey, you're writing us checks, So obviously we would want the most of this dollar that we can get, but we're grateful for the opportunity. And so it's navigating, making sure our lights stay on, and also serving them in the best way. And I think that we are doing that well.
Yeah.
And I mean, so right now our lifetime value is $150 per registry, which is pretty good, I think, for now.
Yeah. And speaking of lifetime value, do you know what your customer acquisition cost is yet?
So currently it's 0 because everyone has come to us with through word of mouth.
You fancy now.
No. So the cool thing is, this is the holy grail of free marketing because 150 people on average go to a wedding, and whether or not they're touching and playing and potentially using our registry. And so even if they're not getting married and this strikes them as something cool, they're going to share it. And we're already seeing the word of mouth. A couple NGO partners have come to us because someone that worked for them went to a wedding with a Heartfully registry. A few couples have come our way too, because so I think the word of mouth is really, really massive. But actually something pretty amazing happened yesterday. And on launch day, I was also pitching at the Washington Post 1776 Ingenuity Summit, and I won, and I happened to win $250,000 in advertising at the Post.
Yeah.
So that's insane.
That's spectacular.
So to put that in perspective, yesterday for launch day, technically the biggest day, I spent $50 in Facebook ads because that was all my broke ass could afford. And so talk about game changing. I mean, it's had the Post said this contest, you'll get 10 grand or $10, I would have been whoa, that's great. Yeah. I have no idea what compelled them to say $250,000 was the prize, but whoa.
Well,
yeah.
I mean,
so yeah.
Talk about validation. That's huge.
Yeah. That's a big part too, is because, sometimes I have this imposter syndrome pop up.
Don't we all?
Yeah. And it was really, really bad for a while, and I would just be why the hell am I here? I was scared. I didn't think I should speak out loud. I'm not a shy person, but I just didn't feel like I had earned my place. And when I really took a step back and was, I was oh, maybe the men don't think I should be here or this or that, or I can't code. And I realized that I was the only asshole talking in my head, nobody was telling me this. No one said you don't belong or you shouldn't be here. And so it was just me being a dumb baby. And so once I kind of stopped doing that, it was like, oh, all right, well.
Yeah. Speaking on behalf of men everywhere, let me just say, you're doing better than most of us. So you're fine. Yeah. We're not the brighter gender. I think that Teague would agree with me on that one.
I'll agree with you on that one too.
Yeah, that's good.
That is awesome. I really, it's so incredibly impressive. There are so many people out there who come up with an idea and, they dream about it. They get this fantasy in their heads about how great life as an entrepreneur would be. I mean, it ends up being sort of a parallel to what if I became a movie star kind of thing. And then they get into the reality of building a real sustainable business, and it's really freaking hard. And,
it's all the stuff that when you're watching the movie version of it, it's just it's the working montage, right?
Yeah,
it's
right. Or love can be found in 2 hours with really exceptionally beautiful people. Like it's just all of its magic, right? It's fine. But the story that you have of coming up with an idea that not only fits in, and I can feel our audience rolling their eyes, fits a lean model of establishing a problem before establishing a solution on top of something that has actual value and meaning to people that it will affect in generous and strong ways. Like you kind of hit it perfectly. And then to be able to carry that and to really work for it, it's not as though anything was handed to you. You really worked for all of this, including your $250,000 worth of free advertising. Nice job there.
Thank you.
Like that's not insignificant. I hope you appreciate the mountain that you've climbed. It's a hard one for all of us.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely like moments like yesterday, I give myself, like a few hours to be like, all right, just swim around in that. But I don't feel like I'm like at the top of this mountain, like maybe at the first summit. I mean, I woke up today, I was like, oh God, I have so much to do. And there's, and now the scary part is that I'm not hiding behind a beta or saying, like it's coming or I swear it's like, just wait. Now this is like my thing front and center and people are going to have opinions on it. And, when it's your child, like, I think that I'm still going to have to continue developing that sort of resilience and thick skin because it's going to get interesting now that it's more in the public view and it's not a final product by any stretch, but it's real. It's not a beta.
Yeah. No, you're kind of a big deal now.
No, God, no. I don't feel like that. Can I tell you that the only thing I've had to eat today was a 3-day-old piece of pizza that I provided for a focus group I did. Because that's
come by my office. We've got Krispy Kreme. You can have it now.
Okay, that's another thing. How do you like move and exercise and eat and sleep? I don't know. That I still don't have. Read on.
Yeah. My waistline would agree with you on that one. Not Teague. He's freakishly skinny, but yeah.
I mean,
He and Katie somehow managed to maintain, I'm the one who got fat. I get it. I know I promised I'd stop being self-deprecating, but anyway.
No, it's like when, like I would say like right now I'm probably 90% heartfully, 10% miscellaneous. And like, I think I need to get that to like 80%, 20. But that'll happen. This is temporary.
Sure. Teague, what are your thoughts on work-life balance?
Yeah.
I have so many thoughts on work-life balance. I think that, what you talked about earlier of the idea that like you're working so hard on this and you're working like all the time on this, but it's the thing that you want to be doing. And I can totally relate to that. There's those moments when it's like, okay, I've been working a long day and now I'm going to relax. And my relaxing is like, oh yeah, let me think more about my business. And like, it's let me stop like actually focusing on things that need to get done today and focus on, the things I'm thinking about my business for next week.
Yeah,
totally.
But you're right that like, it's not sustainable really. Right. I mean, it's a sprint and a marathon. In the beginning, you're trying to move fast enough to actually get some traction so that you get to finish the marathon, which is not the way that people should actually run marathons, I guess. I have never run a marathon. I'm sure there's some folks in the chat who could school me on that one. But yeah, I mean, you put all the effort in up front and continue to put the effort in, but at some point you end up switching into okay, how can I now continue to do this for the next 5 or 10 years instead of, how can I do everything possible to win that first startup weekend or to win that pitch competition or to, get to a point where I can actually, where I get to do it for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
and it's pretty cool.
You're pretty cool.
Wow, Teague, that was
Aw.
good stuff, dude. I like it. You can come back anytime.
I've
you
never
want,
met
Kate.
you, Teague. So
Have you guys really
Yeah.
crossed paths? Oh, come
We
on.
have not. This is very exciting.
do you live in
Yeah.
DC?
I do.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Teague and I got to know each other many moons ago when I first started attending Lean Startup Circle meetings, and at the time he was helping to run them. We have crossed paths many a time since, much to his chagrin. And yeah, I mean, this is a smart guy who knows his stuff, and he lets me hang out, so it's pretty cool.
Awesome.
Aw.
Yeah,
It's a good
I know.
endorsement.
it's all right. I mean, I've said other terrible things about him too, recorded. So I I mean, I got to make up.
It balances out.
It does. Somebody's got to even it.
Yeah. You're walking a fine line.
Yeah. So I want to throw our silent fourth person here in just for a minute. Katie, our newly minted producer here. Katie, you've been listening to this conversation a lot. And as somebody who just started a business and moved to Europe, because people do that apparently after they start businesses. Do you have any thoughts or questions for Kate that you might want to share or ask about?
I was thinking about this. So I come from a nonprofit background myself, and I was wondering, are partnerships on your horizon, and are there any either organizations or companies that you would consider partnering with in the future, or like try to join up with to, grow even faster?
Yeah. So we only are as strong as our nonprofit partners. So that's our model, is that we partner with these amazing nonprofits and feature their work. And so I'm always looking to expand to more amazing partners. I have my sweet spot are sort of I would say grassroots to medium-sized nonprofits, because they're the ones who really don't have the marketing support and probably the bigger donor lists, but are doing really, really awesome and impactful stuff. And so I'm always open to recommendations. Right now we're partnered with about 30 nonprofits on 5 continents, and really trying to scale locally in DC. Because what I've seen is, a lot of people want to support globally, but if you want to support locally, you probably want to support hyper locally. And so because we're focused on DC first, and here, that's really where we're looking now. But always open to more issues, more places. And then in terms of corporate partnerships, I think that there's a lot of really cool co-promotion that can happen with some of the with the Kate Spades and Anthropologies of the world that all have wedding lines. And I've actually been having really good talks with some of these companies because we are not a threat to anyone, basically. We are not saying don't get wedding gifts. You should first of all, everyone wants a KitchenAid, and I know you're not paying for that until you get married. So it's we in no way or it's one or the other. We're your secondary or tertiary registry. And so I think that there's so many opportunities to really buddy up with the bigger dogs and, even in the registry industry.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I was hoping if we could, since we're sort of getting a little bit towards the end of our time, this is the first time that this has happened. I'm so proud that we get to say this. We got a question from our mailbag. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. You, our lovely audience, even actually took the time out of your day to email us a question. Wow. So Katie, if you guys are okay with it, I'd love to read you our question and then get your thoughts and feedback. Teague and I will throw in our 2 cents as well. What do you say? Should we do it?
This feels like Blue's Clues. Is that what
is that because I'm wearing a blue sweater and I kind of look like that guy?
There's a part in the episode where they open a mailbox, right?
I've never watched an episode of Blue's Clues.
I have
I think I have a notebook around here somewhere.
Sure, there we go. Can you find
sound effects or something?
All right, lay it on.
All right.
And while we're working on this question, if folks in the chat have other questions that they want to throw in, we'll try to get to those too after we address them.
And if you listening via podcast would like to send us questions, log on to our website, startupjab.com, and send us a note. We're happy to help however we can. All right. So today's questions comes from an anonymous source, and I'm just reading it verbatim. Here's the problem as I see it. A consultant for our company recently became a full-time employee. He has a decade-plus long relationship with our manager dating back to a previous company. As a consultant, he did not participate in activities that are a regular part of the team's workflow, such as Scrum, retros, retrospectives, etc., as one might reasonably expect. After his transition to full-time, he has resisted participating in these activities. He initially complained loudly about Scrum. Now he does not show up in the morning until Scrum is over. If history is any guide, he should have been fired by now for behaving like this. People on the team seem quite willing to discuss issues deleterious to team morale, but speaking up about this situation seems tantamount to career suicide. How do we proceed? It's an interesting challenge. How do you talk about somebody where it may be politically dangerous to do so?
Yeah. And I think that, this is the case at a lot of startups where you may have sort of blurring lines between professional and personal relationships. Some people may be friends with folks at the organization already. And how do you navigate some of those, existing relationships when you're coming in as another person? And it's, I think it's maybe not uncommon for managers to give preferential treatment. It's certainly not ideal, but most people are not managers first, right? I mean, most managers are promoted out of a functional track rather than being a specialist in management itself. And one of the results of that is you sometimes don't have the best habits or the best training to fill that role. Thoughts, guys, on our suggestions for this anonymous listener?
I'm going to pass. I mean, these are things that I, don't have answers to because I'm still kind of figuring all this out as I go. So I'm actually really interested in what you guys think too.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a hard one.
Yeah.
I think it really is difficult, right? Because, on the one hand, so, I mean, when you're working with a development team and you're doing Agile, Scrum is your daily meeting where everybody shows up, talks about what they're working on and what blockers they have and what they need to be able to make forward progress that day. And if someone is just skipping that meeting, it may be having a very serious effect on the team's ability to do work. Yeah. And, I think on some level, it may be, this is the sort of thing where you maybe get to say once to your manager, like, hey, the fact that this person is not coming really, makes it difficult for us to get our work done. I think that you have to be careful about how you say that because it can't be a personal thing. It can't be, why aren't you, punishing this person for things that all else would be punished for? You can't talk about it in the sense of like, this is not fair. You might be able to talk about it in the sense of this is affecting our ability to do work. Because that's kind of the manager's job is to make sure that the team can do work and to remove obstacles. And if this is an obstacle, you may be able to approach it that way. I do think, this person is right on that you have to be very careful. If it's really about the unfair treatment, obviously it's going to have an effect on morale. Some managers would want to know that. I think that in this case, the manager, well, they might not know that, but I'm not sure they want to hear that if they're, if this is their friend that they're giving preferential treatment to.
I'm going to withhold my answer until I give Katie a chance. Katie, do you have any specific thoughts?
I guess it's less of what to do and more of what not to do, depending on the size of the team, right? Because something that happens even in established companies and offices, you go behind closed doors and you gossip, or people want to pull you aside and you want to, people consider it a cathartic sharing of feelings, but in actuality, it's gossiping and it's building up that kind of negative emotion and that tension that can really make these situations much worse and much more explosive. And I would just stay away from doing that. And if you catch yourself doing that, walk away, back off, resist the urge, because as cathartic as it can make things a lot worse than it needs to be.
I agree.
So
very good advice.
And I having actually been in this situation once a long time ago before, sometimes, the first person you have to protect is yourself, right? You have to make sure that anytime you present this, no matter to whom you're presenting it, you have to be dispassionate, as Teague said. You have to be focused on the work and not about yourself. It can't be, I feel that this is unfair and it's all about me. It has to be the work is suffering. We're not getting accomplished what we need to. We're all going to be called to the mat for this if we're not careful. And the fact that this person isn't participating in something that is required of the rest of us makes it seem as though they're special in some way. If they're a full-fledged member,
I might not even include that last part.
Depending on the relationship, but I would say this. Yeah. You may have to go over the manager and go to their boss if they're not responsive. That's the risk that you may have to take if solving this is important enough to,
and that's a tricky one, is a tricky, right? I think if your manager's manager comes asking for feedback about your manager, then you have an opening to do that. I think if you are taking the initiative to talk to your boss's boss, you have to be prepared for the fact that you may be on your way out. Well, right? I mean, I think that's a point. Like, if you're going over your manager's head and your manager's manager is not particularly discreet, it may get back around. You may no longer find that you have a place to work. I mean, the other part of it that I would say is that this may not be the right place to work if you can't get a manager that doesn't respect or respond to the team's needs. I mean, I think there is that consideration.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the answer may also be this is a bad place to go because this manager is going to go and hire people that they like without making them really responsible for their stuff. And I mean, that could be the case too.
Yeah, and it's certainly worth considering, how much this poor management is affecting your experience at the company and whether it's a place you want to stay. And if you decide it's a place that you don't want to stay, you can try some things, but also don't burn any bridges on the way out, right? Yep. Right. You don't want to decide okay, I'm fine if they fire me, so I'm just going to go mouth off and
that's
burn all these bridges. And,
yeah.
Right. That's not just losing the job. That's losing, all of those connections and relationships. And
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it is tricky, and I appreciate your point about, being careful about how much of that, it's making the rest of us feel as though this person's special kind of thing. I think if you frame those conversations in, this is a group response, not, I'm speaking on behalf of what others are feeling. You have to make sure that you're going to get backed up by that. But I think that there is a value in that conversation from a human standpoint, because it says, look, you're presenting this person as somebody special when supposedly they're on the same playing field as us. If that's not the case, then define that better for us. And if it is the case, then we need to resolve the problem.
Yeah. And so Rob in the chat is saying it can be presented as a team too. And I think it can be. Yeah. It's tricky. Right. And, as Jason just said, you don't want to go in saying, this is how everybody feels unless you're sure that
you don't want to be the guy who's like, I'm leaving. Who's coming with me? And then the Jerry Maguire moment of the one guy who's like, I am. And then nobody follows you. And it's badly.
It sounds like you're speaking from experience, Jason.
No, I just have watched a lot of movies where things magically solve themselves in 2 hours. And he brings it back.
There you go. Working montage.
Exactly.
Yes.
No, I agree. It's a tricky situation. It is also a situation where you get to define who you are as a person as well as an employee. If you're the kind of person who is going to take ownership of your responsibility to the team as well as to your own work, even if the job doesn't turn out to be the right one, you've stood up for a principle that I think is important. And I think that carries beyond that job into the next one.
Yeah, it is possible that in the process of committing career suicide, you actually strengthen a lot of the relationships with the other people who didn't want to be the one to lose their job. I'm not saying that that's necessarily the best approach, right? You still end up losing your job.
So take the bullet,
But, I want to acknowledge, there's also a middle ground here, right? We've sort of been talking about the two options of you can decide that you want to leave, or you can decide that you want to say something about it. You can also decide that in the short term, it's not affecting your work so much, and that you can focus on your work and let that person get their special treatment or whatever, and let them be non-productive and focus on doing your work the best that you can. And I think that, in a lot of organizations, the quality of employees and managers is not uniform throughout. And sometimes it's good to be able to ignore the person who's, just screwing stuff up.
Truth.
As long as it's not personally affecting you, you can do the best job that you can and continue to produce at a high level in light of the circumstances.
Yes. All right. Well, now that we've solved everybody's problems, we've got a few minutes left. If there are any folks in our chat who want to ask questions, or of course, again, if you're listening via podcast, send us a note. But yeah, I think to wrap it, not only have we solved everybody's problems, but we've had a really wonderful opportunity to hear from Kate and her experience. Kate, I love to ask this question of our guests, and T really hates it when I do, particularly when I ask it of him. But if you could go back to the beginning of this process and you could give yourself one piece of advice, what would be that piece of advice?
I wish I knew. Let's see. I was recently asked this question, but they wanted to know if I could go back to like being 24. What would I tell myself? So
24, like specifically
it was
24.
like, yeah, maybe it was like 5 years ago.
I was going to say, is that like a year ago? I feel like that's like a year ago for you.
Oh, thanks for thinking. Yeah. No, I'm pushing 30, man.
Join the club, my gosh.
So, no, I would say be kind to yourself, because if you're not, well, be kind to everyone. And, like if you're not good to yourself in all regards and patient with yourself, then burnout, then all those things are just, probably going to happen. But I do, I think just don't be an asshole. Not that I don't think that I have ever really been an asshole. But,
no, it's Will Wheaton's law. It's Wheaton's law. Don't be a dick.
Yeah. I mean, like, work hard and be nice. And like, if you kind of live by those two, mantras, then I think you can get really far. Cause, I mean, at least so far, so good. I have a long way to go, but I think, both of those combined have been a really powerful, combination for me. So
very cool.
That was a not articulate response.
Nah, that worked.
Really good question.
No, but it was good. I particularly like the don't be a jerk to other people, but also don't be a jerk to yourself.
Right.
Don't be a jerk.
Yeah.
Just in general.
Exactly.
I dig that. Kate, we would love to be able if you're up for it, for folks to be able to reach out to you directly. What would be the best way that you'd prefer for them to do that?
I would love to hear from you, especially if you have recommendations for ways I can do things better. I love hearing constructive and nice criticism. But send me an email at Kate, Kate, at heartful.ly, heartful like the word .ly, no .com.
Yeah.
Although anyone on this really cool application probably knows that, but my mother does not know that.
Fair. Ms. Stanton, our wonderful new producer, welcome again. Before we wrap, what would be the best way for people to reach out to you if they have questions about us or about you and your work?
Yep. You can contact me on this handy little Twitter feed right here, or find me at thegoodlemon.com.
Very cool. Dr. Hopkins, what's the best way for people to find you?
You can find me at Teague Hopkins on Twitter. That's TEAGUE Hopkins on Twitter, or TeagueHopkins.com.
Very cool. And again, I'm Jason Nellis. You can find me at Jason Nellis on Twitter. You can also email me, Jason at brllnt.co. That's Jason at brilliant without the vowels.co. And yes, I do now own brilliant without the vowels.com all spelled out, you jerk. Because that came up last week.
Yeah, we talked about that during the show last week, and Jason was like, crap, now I have to go register that before someone else grabs
Literally the worst. We appreciate everybody's time. If you're interested in learning more about Startup Jab, visit us at startupjab.com, where you can subscribe to our newsletter. We send out notifications before every recording. You can also send notes directly to us, review past episodes. And now that Katie is here, all the cool stuff we'll be doing. I don't know what we'll be doing, but it'll all be cool stuff, I promise. And with that, have a great day. Teague, play us out, buddy.
Bye.